He didn't argue with me. He didn't warn me. He just leaned over the fence and cut a live power cord while I was holding the saw. There was a flash, a loud pop, and the tool in my hands died like somebody pulled the plug on my life for a second. And the craziest part wasn't even the electricity, it was the look on his face like he'd just restored order to his kingdom. Yeah, that happened. It was a Tuesday morning, bright and humid, one of those days where the air already feels thick by 9 a.m., and I was halfway through repairing a storm-damaged fence in a quiet little neighborhood where the grass is cut the same height on every lawn and the mailboxes all match like they came in a starter kit. I've been a contractor for over 15 years. I know what I'm doing. I've worked in neighborhoods nicer than that one and neighborhoods a whole lot rougher, and I treat every job the same. Show up early, shake hands, unload the tools, do the work, get paid, go home. Nothing fancy. Just honest labor. That morning, I was running a circular saw standard electric model plugged into a thick orange extension cord that ran back to the house outlet. Nothing unusual. Just the normal sound of wood being cut. The steady grind of progress, you know what I mean? The homeowner had hired me to replace several fence panels that got knocked loose during a storm. Totally legitimate job contract, signed, everything above board. About 30 minutes in, I noticed him watching me. Ethan Caldwell. Lived next door. Mid to late 40s, clean polo shirt tucked into pressed jeans like he was ready for a Chamber of Commerce meeting. He stood there on his patio at first, arms crossed, just staring. I gave him a nod because that's what you do. Neighborly acknowledgement, keep it moving. He didn't nod back. He walked over to the fence instead. "How long you gonna be running that thing?" he asked, not yelling, just tight. I wiped sweat off my forehead and said, "Couple hours, sir. Just finishing these panels." He didn't like that answer. I could tell. Something in his jaw tightened. He muttered something about the noise carrying and went back inside. I thought that was it. People complain about construction, sometimes it happens. I get it. So I kept working. Saw humming, wood splitting clean, sun climbing higher. Then out of nowhere, the hum turned into chaos. There was this sharp, metallic crunch. Not from my blade, but from somewhere to my left. Then a spark shot out near my feet, and the saw kicked in my hands before going completely dead. I froze. For a split second, I thought the motor had burned out. Then I looked down and saw my extension cord in two pieces, twitching slightly on the ground like a cut snake. I turned slowly, heart pounding in that delayed way where your body realizes danger before your brain does. Ethan was leaning over the fence with a pair of metal pruning shears still clamped shut. "I told you to stop the noise," he said, calm as could be. "Now it's stopped." I stared at him because I genuinely thought he must be joking. "You just cut a live power cord," I said. "You could have killed me." He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "Don't lecture me. People like you come in here and make a racket. Go work somewhere else." And there it was. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold. People like you. If you've heard it before, you know exactly what it means without them having to spell it out. It's a sentence that carries history in it. I felt a flash of anger. Real anger, the kind that starts in your chest and moves to your fists. But I swallowed it. Because I've been around long enough to know that if I raised my voice first, if I stepped toward that fence with too much heat, suddenly I'd be the threat. I took a breath. The cord was still smoking slightly at the ends. "That's destruction of property and reckless endangerment," I said evenly. "I'm calling the police." He laughed, like I just told a joke. I could see it in his face. He thought the deputies would show up and pat him on the back for keeping the neighborhood quiet. That's when I remembered the security camera mounted on the homeowner's garage, small black dome tucked under the eave, pointed right across that section of fence. I didn't say anything about it. I just pulled out my phone and called. The wait for the police felt longer than it probably was. Ethan went back inside for a minute and came back out like he was preparing a speech. I stood there next to my tools, hands visible, heart finally settling into a steady beat. When the cruisers pulled up, two deputies stepped out, familiar small-town energy, polite but cautious. They listened to Ethan first. He talked about excessive noise, about respecting the peace of the neighborhood, about how he'd handled it. I kept my mouth shut until they turned to me. "Sir, what happened?" one asked. I held up the severed cord. "He cut it while I was operating the saw," I said. It was live. They looked at the cord, then at Ethan. He started to protest. "It's just a cord. He's exaggerating." That's when the homeowner came out with his phone and said, "I've got it on camera." The deputy took the phone. We all stood there in the backyard while they watched Ethan lean over the fence and deliberately clamp down on that cord. You could hear the snip even through the tiny speaker. The mood shifted instantly. The deputy's shoulders squared. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click of those cuffs was louder than the saw had been. That was the twist he didn't see coming. The charges were serious. Felony, reckless endangerment, criminal mischief, destruction of property. In that moment, the man who thought he owned the vibe of the neighborhood became the defendant in it. And here's the thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired of the assumption. Tired of having to measure my tone so carefully. Tired of knowing that if there hadn't been a camera, this might have gone differently. That's the part people don't always talk about. Evidence changes everything. Without it, it's just two stories, and sometimes the louder one wins. The video went around town faster than I expected. Brookfield isn't huge. Word travels. Turns out Ethan had a pattern. Complaints about delivery drivers, landscapers, anyone who didn't fit his picture of quiet comfort. The local paper picked it up. His mugshot ran next to a headline about endangerment. And small towns don't forget easily. I finished the fence that week, installed a new extension cord, double-checked every connection. The homeowner apologized more times than he needed to. I told him it wasn't his fault. But something had shifted in me. I filed a civil suit not because I wanted revenge, but because what he did wasn't just rude. It was dangerous. The settlement wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to expand my workshop on the outskirts of town. I bought better equipment, hired an assistant. Then I started taking on apprentices. Young folks who wanted to learn a trade instead of sitting in classrooms that never felt like home. I'd show them how to test a circuit before touching it, how to respect electricity, how to respect themselves. Sometimes when the mood was right, I'd tell them about the man with the shears. Stay calm, I'd say. Let the facts speak. You know what I mean? There's power in composure. Meanwhile, I'd hear little updates about Ethan. How people stopped chatting with him at the hardware store. How conversations died when he walked into the diner. The silence he demanded settled around him like fog. He started keeping his blinds closed, ordered groceries online, became invisible in the very neighborhood he once claimed to protect. And I can't help but think about that sometimes. How quick the current shifts. He wanted quiet, he got it, but not the kind he imagined. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Some folks will say he just made a bad decision in the heat of the moment. Maybe he did. But you don't reach for metal shears against a live cord unless something deeper is driving you. Fear entitlement. A belief that certain spaces belong to certain people. I don't have all the answers. I just know I was there to work, and I almost paid for someone else's prejudice with my life. And yeah, I won in court. I won the settlement. I won the narrative. But the real win, if I'm being honest, is walking into my shop and seeing young people learning a skill, building something solid, taking up space without apology. That's louder than any saw. So let me ask you this. If you'd been in my boots, what would you have done? Would you have lost your temper? Would you have walked away? And if you were, Ethan, would you admit you were wrong? Or would you still say you were protecting the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. Whether you think justice was served, whether you've seen something similar, whether you've ever been told directly or indirectly that you didn't belong. Because stories like this don't end in backyards. They echo. And sometimes the only way to change the current is to talk about it out loud.